Good day, everybody. A little bit about pottery. What we know is that archaeologists have been finding the stuff buried that was made well over 3 to 5,000 years ago. And what we think of pottery that's made today, such as this bowl, is made on a wheel. And the wheel spins and it allows the potter to give it greater circular shape and more uniformity. But before they had invented potter's wheels for that purpose, they would coil a pot. And these are examples of my children's coiled pots that were made when they were very young. And these are actually made of fired ceramic clay that is then painted or glazed. But today we're going to do something that you can do quickly at home, and we're going to make a coiled pot out of what basically is homemade Play-Doh. There are a lot of Play-Doh recipes that can be found, and they all are likely to work very well, but this particular recipe is the best for making snakes, which is what you need to make in order to make a coiled pot. So I will be visited by cats. I'm just going to say that up front. The basic recipe is a cup of flour, a tablespoon of salt. Salt is used in Play-Doh because it helps to kind of preserve it so that if you keep it in a plastic bag for a day or two, it won't get moldy. If you keep it in a plastic bag for a week or two, it will still get moldy. In addition, we have a tablespoon and a half of oil. And if you're very particular about measuring, a half a tablespoon is actually a teaspoon and a half, because I have not yet found a half a tablespoon measure. But then we have this method of a half a tablespoon. Here's the tablespoon. And it looks like it's half full. There we go. And we also will need a quarter of a cup of warm water. The amount of water is kind of important, parents, because it will make the dough the correct level of stiffness. You don't want it too stiff, and you don't want it sticky. So, number one, remove hand jewelry. This stuff is murder on rings. So once you get it all in the bowl, this is the best part for kids, is you just stir it around until it gets nice and crumbly and most of the water is absorbed into the flour. And then apparently I will also be visited by dogs during this. The next step is to squash it all together in a ball. If you are a baker, this next step is what you do with bread or rolls, and that's called kneading the dough. And basically, it's just smashing it. I have a counter that's really good for this. You can also do this on a breadboard or a cutting board. Fold it and smash it again. And you just keep folding and smashing. And this is the point at which you can decide if your Play-Doh is too dry or too wet. It'll be too wet if it's still sticking to your hands at this point, and it's too dry if it's kind of crumbling at this point, which is kind of what mine is doing. You can get your hands wet to just add a little bit of extra moisture to the clay. And your goal here is to knead it until it's nice smooth ball. And this can take 5 minutes or so, maybe 10. I made a ball yesterday, so I'm going to grab that one. This one's a little bit squishier. This is more fun, but it is a little bit stickier, so you kind of have to watch for that. But it's also been sitting for about 24 hours. Now for making a pot. This is where kids come in. Kids like to make snakes with clay. So what we're going to do is start rolling out the snake. And to get it to stretch out, you kind of have to teach a kid to kind of roll to the outside. And the thinner the snake, the thinner the pot will be. Now this clay has a nice stickiness to it, which when you have a good snake rolled down here, it will stick to itself when you coil it up. Now you could make a bottom by rolling the coil up like so, or you could make a ball of clay and smash it flat. And then you build the pot. And right on the edge of the bottom, however you make it, you want to start coiling your pot up. And as you can see with my kids, they pretty much left the coils showing. Potters of long ago would have smoothed the sides out quite a bit in order to keep the surfaces smooth. Makes them easier to clean, makes them easier to take care of. They're less likely to break. So I'm going to add a second snake here, right at the end where the other one stopped, and build up. Now with this kind of clay, like Play-Doh, it's kind of hard to make a really tall pot because it is a little squishy. But once you have your pot, if you start to kind of pinch the sides, you can smooth it out. And if your fingers really start to stick, if you dust them with a little bit of flour, that helps. So here you have a pot. Then the trick to this is to put it somewhere and just to let it dry for several days. When it starts to feel kind of hard, you can roll it and set it on its side so that the bottom dries, because the bottom's going to dry more slowly. And when it's completely dry, it can be painted. It can be coated with some kind of varnish or acrylic so that it's a little bit more durable. Temper paints work, acrylic paints work. Acrylic paints will seal the surface a little better. And the other thing that I have learned by perusing what parents do to make Play-Doh, that I didn't do because I have cats and dogs in my house that would be most interested in this, but to color the clay beforehand, one of the things you can use is food coloring. Food coloring can stain your kitchen and your children's hands. Or you could use rubber gloves to prevent that. The other thing that people use is unsweetened Kool-Aid. If you go get the old-fashioned little skinny packets of Kool-Aid in the grocery store, and you just pour it into the dough when you're mixing it, it will not only color your clay, because it's quite bright, but it will also make it smell wonderfully, like grapes or cherries or whatever. So those are kind of fun, and then it comes ready to hold little items on your dresser or be displayed and saved forever, as mine have been for my children. If you have any questions, I have the recipe here, and my email address is Tony Martell at gmail.com. And if there we go. And if you make a pot and would love to send me a picture, I would love to receive it. Kids' work is some of my favorite. So thank you for joining me. And now I'm going to go make clay. Duck, duck, gray duck.